Hey everyone, it's Brennan. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another video. Today we are going to do some if you like this, then read that book recommendations. So I've been keeping a note going on my phone for when I've been reading books. A lot of the times I will think, oh, this is putting me in the mind of another book that I've read. Now, I will say, I know that if you read a book and you enjoy it, you don't necessarily want to read another book that is exactly the same as that book. So most of these recommendations are just books that have the same feel, not necessarily the same plot, but the plot made me feel the same as another book did. Now this first section is kind of based on like, not middle school books, but books that a lot of kids have to read in school. And if you've been around on my channel for a while, this first recommendation is not going to surprise you at all. But I think if you were in middle school and you read Hatchet by Gary Paulson and you enjoyed it, I think you would also like Be Not Far From Me by Mindy McGinnis. This, when it came out, was probably like contemporary. I mean, obviously when a book comes out in that time period, it is contemporary. But now I consider this kind of like a classic, and Be Not Far From Me by Mindy McGinnis is a newer release. I think it actually just came out last year. But these are both survival stories. In Hatchet, we're following Brian. He's on a plane. It crashes in like the Canadian wilderness. He's like 13 and he survives. In Be Not Far From Me, we are following a high school, I think she's a junior. She's probably like 17. Her name's Ashley. She's in the Smoky Mountain wilderness. She's at like a campfire party with some of her friends. She gets upset. She runs off, she gets injured, and she has to use her survival skills to make it in the wilderness. These are both so good. These both have difficult graphic scenes, if you like that in books, but I loved both of these books. I haven't read Hatchet in a long time. I need to reread it. It's such a thin book. When I was in school, I probably thought this book was like 1,000 pages long. And Be Not Far From Me is also pretty short. I think it's actually like 220 pages or so. Would recommend if you are in the mood for a survival story. And then going off those school reads, if you liked The Catcher in the Rye, if you were one of those weird angsty kids in high school like myself, and you enjoyed Catcher in the Rye, then I think you'll also enjoy Melissa Broder in general. I'm holding up the Pisces here, but I'm also going to pop in Milk Fed, which I just read recently. Well, I read both of her books this year. These are her only two like actual novels that she has out, I believe. So let me explain why I'm recommending this. If you are familiar with Catcher in the Rye, we're following our main character, Holden Caulfield. Wow, I think that's his name, and I just pulled that out of the recesses of my memory. I don't do a lot of research before I film videos. But he is like at this boarding school, I think, and then he kind of starts having a mental breakdown and he leaves it and he's trying to get back home, but he's also just like doing weird things in the city, and he's finding the phonies, or he's like staying away from the phonies. He sees everyone else as like a phony. Anyway, he's having like a mental crisis. Melissa Broder, her characters also love to have those existential mental breakdowns in her books. And in the Pisces, we're following Lucy, and she has just had a breakup with a long-term boyfriend, and she's just kind of trying to figure out what to do. She's like a PhD student writing a dissertation that's not going well, and she has a lot of like really weird thoughts about it. And this has like a merman in it, and it's also like, is he real or is this just part of her brain? And then in Milk Fed, we're following a girl with an eating disorder, and she is low-key trying to get better, but also not trying to get better. But she also falls in love with a Jewish girl who, she's Jewish also, like our main character is Jewish, and she falls in love with this Jewish girl who's from a very like traditional family, like not gonna let her have a girlfriend. And it's just like her having weird thoughts and doing weird things, but also like overcoming her eating disorder. A lot of mental health stuff in these books, and I enjoyed all of them. Okay, now we're going to get into some romance books. So I think that if you like Outlander, if you've read Outlander, if you've watched the TV show, if you like Outlander by Diana Gabaldon, I think you will also like Sea of Ruin by Pam Godwin. These would both be historical romances. Outlander, I feel like I don't have to explain very much, but it's got some time travel in it. We start in the 1940s. We're following Claire, who was a nurse in World War II, and she touches a rock, like imagine Stonehenge. She touches one of the stones and she gets transported to the 1740s, and she meets Jamie Fraser, a very attractive Scottish, how did it describe Jamie? He's not a criminal, but kind of a criminal. He just has a lot going on. He has a very eventful adventurous life. And he and Claire kind of have to have a marriage of convenience. If you've seen the show, like, you know, and there's also like 8 books in the series, and I don't even know if she's done writing it yet. And then Sea of Ruin, I think this is actually an indie historical romance. This is a pirate romance. I read it in my birthday vlog earlier this year. I'll link that below. But this mainly takes place on a ship. And in the Outlander series, the 3rd book, I believe, Voyager, obviously Voyager, what a name, they're on a ship most of the time. So in Sea of Ruin, it's just incredibly adventurous. It gets dark in some points like Outlander does. Like, think towards the end of the 1st book of Outlander, the stuff that happens with Jamie, we get some of that in here with our main character, Bennett. This is also kind of polyamorous. Like, Bennett, our pirate lady captain, is married, but she ran away from her husband and has been apart from him for like 2 years, and we don't really know why. But she's also trying to do like some personal stuff and find a treasure that her dad left, who was also like a pirate guy. But then she also meets like a British Navy captain, and they have a thing, and there's just a lot. There's so much. This book was so fast-paced, but there was also just a lot of it. There's a lot of action in both of these books. If you read one, I believe you will like the other. The next romance recommendation I have for you is, if you liked One Day in December by Josie Silver, then I think you will also like Just Last Night by, I don't know if it's Mari McFarlane. I butchered that, I'm so sorry. Which I think is a newer release. I think Just Last Night is a newer release. And this is so funny because I started Just Last Night and I was like, wow, this is really putting me in the mind of One Day in December with its like sad romance, like heavier. These are both heavier books. But then I was looking at the book and it's actually blurbed by Josie Silver. So two peas in a pod, these books. They're both heavier books, and if you read one and haven't read the other, then I think you would enjoy picking them up. I personally like Just Last Night more than One Day in December. One Day in December, we're following a friend group, and our main character sees a guy and has like an instant connection with him, but then can never find him again until he shows up at a party as the boyfriend of her best friend and roommate. And then the book spans like 10 years, and there's some tragedy and there's different relationships in it, and just a lot. There's a lot of stuff going on in it. And then Just Last Night, we also follow a friend group, and this friend group experiences a tragedy, and then while they are coping with this tragedy, a romance develops. I don't even want to say who the romance is with because I thought it was going to be with like some people in the friend group, but then it wasn't, and I was really happy. That's super vague. These both have heavier, dark topics, and our main character in Just Last Night, Eve, she's like a modern day emo girl. She's in like her mid-30s, and she's been like an emo girl her whole life. And I thought that was really unique as a character. You don't really like see that, and I enjoyed that. These are like big character stories, I feel, and they focus a lot on relationships within friend groups. Really enjoyed both of these. If you are in the mood for like a sad romance that has some happiness in it but is mainly sad. Okay, and then for romance in general, if you like Tessa Bailey, like her Hot and Hammered series, her new release, It Happened One Summer, I think you will also like Penny Reed as an author, especially her Winston Brothers series. And I'm saying this because Tessa Bailey and Penny Reed have, I don't want to say they have similar writing styles, but the feel of their books is similar, meaning that they are so funny, and I get so invested in the characters because I just love them so much and I'm rooting for them, and they're like wholesome, yet they can still kind of touch on some, I don't even want to say darker subjects, but just some juicier subjects. So in Tessa Bailey's books, she will kind of get into a little bit of mental health, a little bit of like past trauma, and in Penny Reed's series, we have some of that too. Our Winston family, their mom has passed away, their dad is like a bad seed, he's in prison now, and there's an underlying theme of a motorcycle club in the town that's kind of darker. And while that may seem dark, these books are just so funny. Like, these are not heavy books, they are lighthearted, and also they get pretty steamy. Tessa Bailey especially, but I have noticed in Penny Reed's books, she will like be sure to include something pretty steamy pretty soon in the book, and I appreciate that as a romance reader. So yeah, if you've read either of these authors, I would recommend checking out the other. And then I have one thriller recommendation. So I will say, I don't read a lot of thrillers. Like, I feel very, not naive in the thriller world, although I am naive as a person in general, but I just don't feel very rooted in the thriller world. I just don't have much of a backlog, a mental backlog to go on when I'm comparing books and reading new books. But I would say that my favorite thriller I've ever read is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. What I loved so much about this book is that, you know, we're going along and then like maybe 40-50% into the book, we get like an awesome new addition of plot, and it just like keeps you on your toes the whole book. So in Gone Girl, we have a girl who goes missing and her husband is under investigation, but he's also trying to figure out where she went. And then, you know, we get halfway through the book and then it gets just like a completely new spin on it, and I loved that in this book. So if you had a good time reading Gone Girl, I would recommend The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. I'm actually not quite done with this book while I'm filming this, but I have maybe 40% left of it, and I reached that like 45% mark of this, and it just did something with the plot, and I was like, oh, this could be like a new favorite book, especially a new favorite thriller. I just love that we're developing the story and then we get something completely new and then it kind of goes off on a tangent. I love that. I should describe what this book is about. This book starts when two people meet at an airport. One's a married guy and he just found out that his wife is cheating on him and he decides that he might want to kill her. He kind of says it like in passing. They're at a bar, he's had a few drinks, and the girl he met at the airport, Lily, is like, oh, you want to kill your wife? I can help you with that. And then we're getting the story from both of their viewpoints, and with Lily, we are seeing a lot of her past and maybe some shady things she has done in her past that make her up for the job to assist this guy in murdering his wife. And it's so good so far. I'm loving it so much. Hopefully it stays strong and doesn't disappoint me at the end, but that 50% mark, that's just so important to me in a thriller, and this book has knocked it out of the park. So if you've read one of these and you haven't read the other, I would recommend. Those are my main recommendations for you, and I said that I didn't want to recommend books that were too similar to each other, but these last two are definitely similar to each other. But if you like Greek mythology and you have read Circe and you just want another book that is going to make your heart swell with happiness and hopefulness but also like shrivel up and die, then I think you should also read Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. Because if you've read Circe, then you've met Ariadne, so you know you can kind of treat this as like a companion series, even though some of the characters in Ariadne, like Ariadne's mom Pasiphae, are portrayed very differently in this book. So I think that's cool too. You can see these Greek characters, and you know how Greek retellings go. Sometimes one character can be the good guy in one story while they're the bad guy in another story. And I just enjoyed both of these books so much. They've been big favorites this year. I've just really been in a mood for some Greek mythology this year, and so both of these have really hit the spot for me. If you've read one of these, I would definitely recommend the other. If you are kind of into, I'm not calling these boring books, but when I hear people complain about them, they say that they're boring. So that's some people's prerogative, but also like they are just, they're crafted. They're well-crafted stories, and that takes some time sometimes, but to me the payoff is so worth it. I've loved both of these books so much. But those are a few quick book recommendations. If you like this, read this. I really like watching when people do these videos. Let me know some of your if this then that book recommendations. Also, let me know how you feel about these books. If you want to pick some up based on these recommendations, I would love to talk about them with you. But give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next one.